Coming up next, Sanity at the movies, reviews, Jaws. Just kidding. We're doing Close and for some reason that I don't really understand.
It's a really great Jaws reference in that score.
I know, right? With that, at the ending with the big mothership.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Do you get a dent?
Yeah,
it was like trolling them about what was about to happen.
Yep.
Pretty fun.
I missed it.
Oh man, come on!
I missed it. Well, I'm not good at watching movies, guys.
I've noticed that in our discussions, especially the ones about Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
Well, guys, it's all about. Have you noticed how Close Encounters of the Third Kind decouples ritual from meaning? Did you guys notice that?
No, actually, I didn't.
That's probably because it doesn't. Hey, if you didn't listen to Spider-Verse Part 2, which, let's be honest, you've listened to Spider-Verse Part 2 3 or 4 times now to mine all the gold from that particular gold mine. But if you didn't listen to it, then you don't know the joke that I'm making at my own expense regarding the silly way that I wrote a certain thing that I believed. All right. So, guys, we are talking today about Close Encounters of the Third Kind, a little movie by Steven Spielberg, his third film, released in 1977, same year as Star Wars, a little bit later in the year than Star Wars.
Same year as Alien.
Same year as Alien, a golly year for space adventure.
Star Wars, Alien, and Close Encounters.
Wow.
Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah, and you can argue that
Never thought about that.
You can argue it's three different approaches to what's out there. One is pure horror, one is pure benevolence, and I don't know what Star Wars is just like.
Star Wars is not.
Whee!
An avatar for processing your own hero's journey.
That's Star Wars. Okay, well, anyway, speaking of Star Wars, I don't know how to do it.
Yes, you do.
A star of this podcast who goes to war with pop culture every week on this podcast as he talks about movies. His name is Benjamin Sulzer. He is.
And he talks about it every week. We just don't.
Oh yeah, we put Ben in a
episodes.
room. We tell him the microphone's running. He talks about movies. It's great. We get a lot of thoughts on samurai movies. And
Yeah.
No.
Every other week we
hit record. And, No, that's not true.
Keeps me going.
Yeah. Look, Ben, why don't you keep going right now?
Yeah.
By introducing the third person on the podcast, our good mutual friend, Jake Menzel, pastor who's a master of cinema. Why don't you go ahead and introduce him and tell people what his whole deal is?
Well, it's Pastor Jake Menzel, our friend who uses the force of his personality and his insights to talk about movies. Hi,
Right.
Jake.
Hi.
Hey guys, I have a fun exercise. Which one of us is aliens? Which one of us is Star Wars? And which one of us is Close Encounters?
I don't even know what that means, but I think you're Close Encounters. I think Jake is Alien, and I'm Star Wars.
That is such a bogus self-aggrandized. Ben's like, I'm fun. Jake is the Prince of Death, and Nathan is just warm,
Evil.
warm, benevolent nothingness.
Morally bankrupt.
Morally bankrupt, warm, fake benevolence.
Faux transcendence.
Let me tell you how I think. I think I get to be alien because I'm dark.
Wow.
And I don't know, Ben, since you're the one that did this whole thing, I'm assigning you Close Encounters. You're fake benevolent, but secretly dark. And Jake's Star Wars because he's got a lot of heart and he likes to swing over chasms with his sister hanging on to him.
Wow.
And I'm really great at dialogue.
And he's really great at dialogue.
Oh.
Would you like to assign them, Jake? Me and Ben have both assigned them.
I'm just happy to be here. I don't want to assign anybody the dark, angry, I want to run away from my family and responsibility and hate everything.
Isn't that funny that we would all rather be Alien than Close Encounters?
Absolutely.
Oh, man.
Absolutely.
Because Alien at least is like, I'm going to burst through the chest of your stupid arguments and you can put a positive spin on Alien. I understand how corporate greed destroys everything. And anyway, 3 great films, 3 great podcasters talking about one crummy movie.
It's a well-crafted movie.
Well, we're going to get into it. It's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And why did we decide to talk about this movie? This is an honest question. I don't actually remember.
Because we decided that we would make September Amblin month. And we wanted to do Spielberg. And we wanted to do something fun and a little out of the box. And it came down to the sure, easy win of all easy wins. To be easy.
Sugarland Express?
Yes. Sugarland Express. Not easy. Or Close Encounters for some reason.
Yeah, we talked about doing late era Spielberg, your Minority Report or Tintin,
we decided we wanted to do something early.
Yeah, like we wanted to do a classic. It would be fun to talk about post-classic Spielberg at some point, which I would say anything post Saving Private Ryan is post-classic Spielberg. You could argue that Minority Report is a classic of its own kind, but in any case,
It kind of is.
Yeah, it kind of is. It's pretty great. Although I haven't seen it for many, many years.
I saw it. I've seen it in the last 10 years, and it held up. And
so you think it might be the last great Spielberg popular entertainment?
I think so.
I mean, I think
I'd be ready to. I think I'm.
I might argue that Tintin is actually the last great Spielberg popular entertainment because it's pretty good.
It's pretty good, but I've not.
It was okay. It was kind of throwaway. Honestly.
Tintin?
Yeah.
It feels good. It's sort of like the BFG is kind of the same thing. It's good, but it's not like great.
Yeah, I never bothered.
But I feel like Minority.
The BFG.
I think.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
It's good, but not great. I feel like Minority Report is at least worth revisiting and asking the question. Maybe we would conclude no, but
certainly an influential movie design-wise, and
one of the most influential movies of the 21st century.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
No, it definitely came out post-millennium.
And everything you know about your iPhone and iPad and all user interface is shaped by that movie.
Yeah, except for if we don't want to transfer a file from one computer to another, we don't have to put on gloves and then take the digital file out and transfer it. Minority Report actually complicates things a little bit, but
but even like the visuals and like a Marvel movie with Iron Man, and if you ever have
everything that Iron Man, Marvel is just Minority Report. That's all.
Yep.
Well, we're not here to talk about Minority Report. I kind of wish we were because, Close Encounters is going to be hecka fun to talk about, but it is a problematic movie. I think
I did not realize how bad that movie was.
It was not fun to watch. I didn't have fun.
It has its fun moments. It's the truck scene, the horror scene in the house. Like
I think the first act is great. I love the first act. I hate the second act where he's just going insane and his family doesn't like him. And then all the stuff where he's like running around Wyoming or Montana or wherever that is. Is it Montana? Where's Devil's Tower? Wyoming. That's kind of boring. When the spaceships come, I mean, it's suitably impressive and stuff, but the messaging is terrible. But there is a wonderful little They're Watching Us movie where Dreyfuss goes out in his truck and then the kid getting abducted. I mean, that stuff is classic Spielberg at his full powers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Glowy orange lights illuminated by mist. Kind of, I mean, all the stuff that the Stranger Things boys thought that they could try and do.
The oven might eat you if you're not careful.
Yeah.
The coming up through the vent.
Yeah. We'll talk about it. That stuff's great. I love the first act of this movie. Even just the dorky Francois Truffaut is standing in front of this or that artifact while Bob Balaban translates for him.
You've got the planes and you've got the ship and the ship's more
middle.
It's not the first act.
Ship's actually one of the reshoots that Spielberg did for the director's cut. And
Really?
What baggage let's start here. What baggage did you guys bring? Had you seen this movie before?
I had seen it.
And do you remember liking it, or?
I remember being glad I watched it, and
just kind of as a check that one off the list, kind of you have to watch it at least once kind of thing.
Yep.
Do you like aliens and alien movies?
I have seen Alien. That's the only one I've seen.
No, I mean movies
Oh,
with aliens,
movies with aliens.
not
Sorry,
the Sigourney
I do.
Weaver franchise.
I do. I do. I like that sort of thing. I like E.T. I like War of the Worlds. I like all kinds of stuff like that. It's interesting to me.
I'm a sucker for it, and I especially was as a kid. I mean, it was that and dinosaurs. I mean, Spielberg really spoke to me as a kid because he covered a lot of my bases in terms of, and probably helped create a lot of my bases. But man,
give me X-Files, Saucerman type stuff any day over dinosaurs.
Yeah,
as a kid.
Ooh, that's a hard choice. I might take dinosaurs, but
me as a kid, I'm going aliens and Saucermen over dinosaurs for sure.
Yeah, I think I was the same.
It's the mystery and the intrigue of something else out there that could be in the allure of the
unknown,
the unknown, the transcendent, the forbidden, the conspiratorial.
When you put it that way, yes, I am. I mean, I remember going out to watch meteors as a kid, and just what's out there in the sky, the vastness of it, the unknown.
Yeah,
studying the planets in school, all that kind of stuff was really intriguing to me. And the X-Files was actually scary to me because I didn't really become a horror kid until I was a young teenager. And I remember my parents watching X-Files like when I was a kid and just being creeped out by the music and by the credits sequence and not really understanding what it was, but knowing it was something that was mysterious and potent. And then, of course, two of the biggest hits from our collective childhood, early teenage years are Independence Day and Men in Black.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
both of those movies, I think all three of us probably brought more intrigue to than the movies themselves as artifacts actually bring. Like Independence Day is not a great movie, but like it doesn't do a lot to make you feel the mystery of space and aliens and stuff. But you feel it as a kid because there's a big saucer hovering over us, and there's glowy blue light inside of it, and what are they here for? And we'd never seen, we didn't all grow up. I mean, Ben, of course, watched the Sigourney Weaver franchise while drinking from his bottle in his crib.
That's what I did.
Would wheel a TV.
That's what my parents would do to entertain me.
Fun fact about you, Ben.
Also, yep.
That's not true at all.
Yep.
But my point is, we hadn't seen a lot of the alien things, and so either the Sigourney Weaver franchise or other alien things, and so
Stargate, man. For me as a kid, Stargate was my favorite thing.
My dad loved that movie, and we'd watch that. I've watched that movie more times than I care to admit.
Well,
I can't believe how many times I've seen that movie.
Kurt Russell, one of the great heroes of alien fighting, and The Thing too. Kurt Russell's just a good alien
Kurt
fighter.
Russell is. What a great movie star.
Roland Emmerich, you have shaped more of our childhood than we care to admit.
Roland Emmerich.
Maybe we should just, one day, when this podcast has truly come to its fruition, we'll have to...
To its dotage.
To its dotage, yeah. We'll just do a straight Emmerich run.
Oh, talk about... Oh, man.
I have actually never seen anything after The Patriot. I think I tapped out after The Patriot. I've never seen like 1000 BC.
The Day After Tomorrow?
I've seen parts of that on TV, maybe.
Day After Tomorrow is such a boring
what this show's
movie.
going to do in its dotage is just be a discussion of Ancient Aliens shows.
Of Ancient Aliens, yeah. We'll actually review the show Ancient Aliens every episode.
That's what I mean.
And discuss them. Well, my baggage is similar to Jake's. I love aliens, and I did not see this movie until I was a teenager, I think. And I was old enough that this was a checkbox. Like I knew Spielberg was one of the guys, and I needed to see it. And I don't remember being particularly excited about it, but I remember it being effective. I don't remember not liking it. It would have been around the same time that I saw Rocky. I associate those two as far as like Nathan's a young budding cinephile, and he just needs to tick some boxes. And in both cases, I think I didn't quite understand. I must have been pretty young, maybe 11 or 12. I got it. There's nothing much to get about Close Encounters or Rocky. But going back to both of them as adults, I'm like, there's a lot of subtext to both of these things in terms of Rocky's relationship. I mean, it's not complicated, but it's some stuff that was above an 11-year-old's head. Yeah. And certainly Dreyfuss's relationship with his wife and everything that we're about to litigate went over my head the first time I saw this movie. It was just a movie about shiny aliens coming down. I think the lack of any kind of a discernible, real violent conflict in the movie probably turned me off a little bit. Like, after Independence Day, you wanted your aliens to be a little bit more malicious. it was kind of weird to see them be so nice. But I remember liking the movie. Ben, what baggage do you bring to aliens as a species?
And I liked various cheesy movies about aliens. There's some like Flight of the Navigator.
I like that one.
Yeah,
as a kid.
Probably is still kind of fun. Let's see, what The Explorers?
Pee Wee
like
Herman plays the ship.
Yeah, and he was great at it. The Explorers, if anyone saw that 80s movie,
never saw
it was
it.
about. It was really fun. It's probably inappropriate, but it's a kids movie about kids going into space.
Was that the Joe Dante one?
Yeah, which explains why it was slightly classy. Like Joe Dante has a pretty good eye, and
Joe Dante.
They just like make their own spaceship or something. Like,
they do something like that.
Do they get like a word from? Do they get an alien message, Dreyfus style? Like they know how to build it because aliens want to meet them.
I really can't remember. I just remember it was fun, and the whole messaging of the movie is it's all directed at kids. I want to say it's even a message about like bang your parents or something. I'm not sure. Probably not. Probably
I don't know.
That's too far.
It's from that era when Dante was just cranking out one sort of B classic that's not quite an A classic after another. You got like your Gremlins and your Howling and your that, and
I don't know. It's been too long. But anyway, I liked alien stuff. I never saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I never felt
until now. You watched it for the podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Until now, I never felt any curiosity.
Did you avoid it? Like, did it have a negative?
I didn't
vibe
particularly
in your mind?
avoid it. I just had a boring vibe in my mind. Like, well, I do like alien movies, but I feel like nothing is going to happen in this one except it's going to be about a benevolent encounter with aliens, and I just don't care enough.
the first time I watched it, I didn't know that it was benevolent, and so I had some of the fun of.
Which would totally be
having
the
a
way
whole-
of seeing this movie. The
That's
abduction
right.
scene would have so much more juice to
if
it.
in 1977 you haven't had Star Wars and you haven't had Alien and you haven't had any of these other things that we've been talking about, what you've had is H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds and a bunch of other body snatcher type, weird stuff. And then to throw this sort of like mashup of horror, that would have been fun.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had a little bit of that on my first watch of it, but still seeing it in sometime in the 2010s probably.
Yeah, I think you've watched it post Nathan. Well, not after. Not
Yeah,
in the future.
no, I think it was.
I remember
you
talking
encouraged
to you
me to
about-
watch it. Yeah, we talked. I remember talking to you about it.
Yeah, it
First
was
time I watched
maybe
it.
one of those like, well, the wife and the kids are out of town. What sort of box should I tick?
Yeah,
Nathan, well, Jake, you could do worse than watching one of the classic Spielberg joints. And
yeah. I think we were probably starting this. It may have been in the last 5 or 6 years. I think because I think you were encouraging me to round out my missing Spielberg.
yeah, just hit a few of those AFI top 100 so you can have a little bit more context as we talk about things. Yeah, that's not unlikely.
Yeah, because I remember in the same. No, Poltergeist was after.
You definitely watched Poltergeist for this podcast, and that was.
Did we? Oh, did we do that last?
Yeah, we did that last year. That was.
Wow, we did that on the show.
If you want my self-assessment,
Not with me, but you guys did.
Okay, yeah.
I think it was the first time I was really, really, really excited about this podcast because we had such a fun discussion about Spielberg and
That's
Suburbia.
right. Man.
And it's a terrible, stupid movie, but we there was a lot to talk about in it.
Yeah,
And yeah,
that's right.
kind of the dark flip side of this movie. Not that this movie particularly needs a dark flip side, as we're about to discuss.
Well, Spielberg is much better when he knows what he's angry about and is just,
Nazis, they're the worst.
and is ready to kill the crap out of the people that
Crush
he's
them,
angry
blow them
at.
up, put them in a pot, melt them. Well, yeah. This is a movie that is angry and does not.
So angry.
The interesting fun fact: me and Jake, independent of each other, both just watched Jaws for various reasons, which we've both seen a million times before. But I think it probably helps this discussion that we both have Jaws. Because Close Encounters is the blank check movie that Spielberg gets to do after Jaws makes all the money in the world.
Yeah.
Spielberg.
Jaws 75, Close Encounter 77.
Right. They're right on top of each other. 1-2 slam bang punch. Spielberg owns the world forever after that.
Yep.
And then the 80s is just E.T., Indiana Jones. It's one of the greatest artistic runs in
Popular
the last couple
media
hundred years, popular media period. Yeah. In the history of film, certainly it's arguably the best popular run and the most popular run that anyone's ever
and
had.
therefore the most important.
And therefore the most important. In terms of shaping early cinema, as we like to say, cinema is young. We'll see how important it is in 1,000 years. But in terms of shaping where we're at, I don't think you'd be hard pressed to name anything. I mean, short of like the jazz singer introduced sound, or Citizen Kane helped collate visual storytelling. There's things like that.
Yeah.
Right.
But in terms of what movies are about and how they're about what they're about and how they're sold and what kinds of stories we enjoy and who they're marketed to and all those kinds of questions that influence everything that you watch, dear listener.
And it's just remarkable how they can be such touchstones to reshape everything about the way cinema is done and still hold up.
Mm-hmm.
And be start to finish enjoyable and not feel slow or stupid or anything. There are complaints we'll have about Close Encounters on those fronts, but Jaws, E.T.,
Raiders of
the Lost Ark, there is nothing to complain about in terms of it's just
the structure, the pacing,
everything about the structure and pacing holds
language,
up.
Visual language.
50 years later.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah, no, those movies,
along
with a handful of things like the original Star Wars and things like that, they just simply, you don't have to be a cinephile. You don't have to know anything about the history of where these movies are. You just, I mean, who doesn't love Raiders of the Lost Ark? Who doesn't love E.T.? It's just, yeah. Well, let me give a little bit of context for this movie. I think you have to understand these guys as baby boomers. You have to understand, by these guys, I mean the whole movie brat generation, Spielberg, Lucas, Scorsese, all the guys who are kind of the grandfathers of cinema now, the old guard now. I think you have to understand them as baby boomers. And for that, you kind of have to understand the middle of the 20th century and what happened. And I don't understand what happened. I think it's easy to be cheap about what happened, but I don't know. That greatest generation goes off. They fight a big war. They defeat Hitler. It's great. And then we have the 1950s and we kind of maintain the facade of civilization. And then civilization falls to pieces and we've never gotten it back. We could sit here and we could talk about it for a million hours and throw out all kinds of theories. I mean, I suspect it's because they were just the greatest generation was so burned out from defeating ultimate evil that they just didn't have the heart to
discipline their kids.
Maybe they had the heart to discipline them, but they didn't have the heart to get their kids' hearts. I mean, maybe what they didn't have was affection. Maybe they knew how to do the John Wayne thing, but they didn't know how to have their hearts. Because you see the baby boomers, and it's a generation that just wants to disassociate from their parents, wants to rebel, wants to grow their hair long, wants to, 60s counterculture.
And then wants to live with as they come into the 90s with sentimentality and nostalgia for their parents and their parents' generation and the greatest generation. And
the generation who they completely cast off and said, stop holding us back, losers.
Yeah, but then we're going to revisit and do all of we're going to have Saving Private Ryan. And we're going to have all of the, Well,
Spielberg, by the way, is the perfect avatar for that because his early movies are all family sucks. I am an angry young man. Everything that I've been told about this suburban lifestyle is garbage and I hate it. And I'd like to just get on a spaceship and middle finger to everyone. And now in his dotage, he makes these cheesy historical dramas about Tom Hanks is a member of the greatest generation and he's helping the Bridge of Spies or whatever. It's like all
there was this great horse in the war that...
Yeah, he just makes movies about Tom Hanks being a member of the greatest generation and being great. He wants to be completely sentimental about it. And he wants to tell us how great it all was. The very thing that he is arguably most responsible for, leading the charge of just tearing that all to pieces and showing it for the hypocrisy that he apparently thought it was. Like, there's not a movie that's more angry at the 1950s of
sentimentality is what you get when you don't love something that you feel guilty for not loving.
You spend your life kicking something to pieces, and then you try and tell everyone how sentimental you are about it. And how much you love it.
We sentimentalize things that we hate and feel bad about hating. That's what we do. It's a fake, superficial love for things that we just don't love and feel bad about not actually loving.
We say this a lot of time, but go back to the Victorian era. Look at the way they sentimentalized children as they sent them to factories.
And coal mines.
And suddenly you have Tiny Tim, and he's this beautiful, angelic creature. And you have these mawkish paintings of kids. And it's ridiculous. It's borderline obscene, some of it. But they're pouring all this sentiment to the point of almost eroticizing them. They're pouring this sentiment onto kids. And it's because they just feel terrible about what they're doing to children.
Yep.
I think what you said, discipline without affection, is true.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true. It's the stereotype of John Wayne. He's not going to talk to the kid. He's just going to throw him in the pool and say, learn to swim. I mean, that's your placeholder for the greatest generation. And then you have this generation of
strong but silent type.
Yeah. People who are just like, we needed you to be strong and talk to us. That would have been really nice.
Yeah.
And also, you guys were just as sexually promiscuous as we were. And we just want to be honest about it. Now, I'm not trying to glorify the counterculture movement because it was evil. But the thing about the counterculture movement is there's always been student protesters and there's always been a counterculture. You can go to any year, go to the 18th century and you have the Bohemians, go to the early 20th century and you have the anarchists. But suddenly in the interesting thing about the 60s and mid-century America is not that there were hippies. What's interesting is that they actually became the dominant culture.
They won.
And that's something that by and large hasn't happened in Western civilization up to that point. And so, yeah, it's just fascinating. And I think to get us to 1977, what you really have to think about is the fact that you have this generation of young people that are just mad in the 1960s. They're tired of the masks. You don't love me, Dad. And there's this, similar to now, there's this really sharp divide between what Nixon called the silent majority, just the working class, greatest generation people that just wanted to go on like things were. And then the counterculture, the student revolutions, the hippies, the people who wanted free love, who wanted to be themselves, to experiment with drugs, and things just become really sharply divided. And you have Vietnam, and you have the death of Kennedy in 1963, and you have all these things. And what I really want to talk about is the New Age movement, because I think Lucas and Spielberg are two of the great popularizers of the New Age movement. And you have to understand that as coming out of the 1960s and 1970s counterculture, where people just feel so burnt by institutional authority and by authority in general that they really want something to believe in. And so they just start turning to all this stuff, all this Hindu and Taoist and these different sort of tune in and find higher consciousness.
Things that seem to allow them to find that higher meaning independent of existing authority.
Yeah. And it's all such crap, but it gets such a hold in the late 60s and early 70s. You have like all this, and it starts in San Francisco, as every wonderful thing about our culture does. It starts in the beautiful Bay City, and you have the hippie movement sort of transform into this New Age movement where they just want to channel their inner selves, transcend reality, merge with the forces of the divine in the universe. And it's not like there's one movement, but there's increased interest in the occult, in UFO religions, in UFOs in general, in Eastern religions, in old school paganism. Like all these things are suddenly becoming popular.
In also really connected to the psychedelic drug movements of the 60s and 70s as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so people are having these out-of-body experiences, actual, well, not literal, but actual things that feel like out-of-body experiences. People are transcending reality. And the one thing that anyone, I've not done it, of course, but the one thing that anyone will tell you about taking LSD or any kind of hallucinogen is there's the time before you took that, and there's the time after that. And once your consciousness has been altered, it does not go back. You do not see the world the same way. You do not think about things the same way.
Yep.
Which is
a pretty universal testimony.
Pretty universal testimony, and I think a very frightening one.
Yep.
Some people would see it as a very beautiful one. But I mean, I was just in preparation for this, I was watching some documentaries about the 60s and 70s, and it's just insane how much it reminds you of today in terms of the sharp, nasty, mean-spirited divide between the conservatives and the liberals, or I don't know how you'd want to cast them, between the young people and the old people, between the people who see themselves as progressive and the people who see them as traditional. You have Nixon, he gets elected in 68, 69, something like that, and he runs on, I'm going to pull us out of Vietnam. And then he ends up invading Cambodia in 70. And then you have the Kent State Massacre, as people call it, where there's this violent student protest and the Ohio National Guard goes in and 4 people are killed. And then in response to that, you have the Hard Hat Riot, which is all these, I wrote it down here, 800 office workers and 400 construction workers who attacked about 1,000 demonstrators, students who were students, that were striking against the Vietnam War. And so like the conservative people get so mad that they just attack and beat the crap out of the students. And so it's just riots. And I don't know, it's interesting that this stuff doesn't get talked about more, that you have to I guess most people know Kent State, but I didn't remember the Hard Hat Riot.
No, I don't know about this stuff.
And the Hard Hat Riot is called the Hard Hat Riot because it's a bunch of construction workers. Nixon invites the leaders of the movement to the White House, and they give him a freaking hard hat, and he wears it to show solidarity with these construction workers that just went and beat the crap out of hippies, basically. And so, I mean, nothing's new under the sun. Trump, Biden, it is like that level of cultural war. Polarization and more of a hot war than a cold war. People are angry at each other and they are demonizing each other. And it's this really nasty time. And much like now, it's this really apocalyptic time. You have nuclear war always on the horizon. You have the Cold War. You have Russia. You have Vietnam. You have people going to die in Vietnam and nobody really understands why. And it just keeps escalating. And people are like, what are we even fighting for? And the soldiers don't know. And the soldiers, I mean, we've all seen the documentaries and things. I don't have to rehash all of this. Yeah, but it is very similar. And it's similar too, in that you have Vietnamese fighting for their homes, fighting for their land. Yep. And then you have a bunch of American soldiers and British soldiers and French. There's like, we don't actually know why we're here or what we're even trying to accomplish. And so it's just this really scary, divided time. And people want things to believe in. And
lithium and opium, man. That's what we're fighting for.
Yeah, well, exactly, man. Exactly. You understand. And so again, in the 1970s, that really just turns into a big, popular, I think maybe the last big popular spiritualist movement on that level. I mean, today, spiritualism of that type is just kind of accepted. But in terms of just popular occultism, popular paganism, in terms of the boom of horror movies that happened, you have Rosemary Baby hit 69, something like that. The book The Exorcist is published in 73. They're just giant bestsellers. And Stephen King launches his career in the 70s. Anybody, like you or me or any of us could have written a horror book and got it published at that time. It was just like the easiest thing. The market was glutted. People were so into the occult, the supernatural, new age crap, healing, acupuncture, like all that stuff that we kind of take for granted now was just booming in the early 1970s. And some of that is people being very optimistic and wanting to believe in higher powers and benevolent powers, like what Close Encounters is eventually going to give us. A lot of that is just people processing their fears. I mean, Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist as the two big horror properties are interesting because they're both about people being invaded by having their domestic lives. Rosemary's having a baby, and then The Exorcist is famously about a little girl who gets possessed. And so they're both like these stories of this big, scary other coming into my normal little existence, which you can imagine for a conservative America that's suddenly dealing with hippies and new age people and like all this stuff. It was really potent to think my baby just might be the devil or my daughter might be possessed by the devil. Like it's barely a metaphor in terms of what people are dealing with and what they're scared of. And then I think you have all the stuff going on. And then I think you really have to see Lucas and Spielberg as being like they do for new age philosophy what McDonald's does for hamburgers. They just figure out a way to package it for absolutely everybody. And they both do their master strokes in 1977, actually, at the culmination of all these fears, all these anxieties, all these sort of problems and chaos. And then you have two guys, you know, I don't want to overstate it, but I think that they do make a profound cultural impact and we don't necessarily think, if I said, name a great new age proponent, you wouldn't first think of Lucas or Spielberg.
You might think of Lucas.
Yeah, you might think of Lucas.
But not Spielberg.
But 1977, Close Encounters and Star Wars both came out, and they are two of the best popular media statements of benevolent, new age, transcendent garbage.
And then Alien is one of a good statement of like malevolent.
Yeah.
It's not, you wouldn't even call it new agey, but it does have a feeling of a spirit. It has a spiritual component to it.
Right. It's like,
not in the text of the film, but.
Well, I think in the same way, Jaws is actually very similar to Alien. It is just, there is a thing. It will not stop. It is coming to destroy us. You get in the water, you do this prosaic, fun family activity. It ends in blood. It ends in death. You cannot stop it. It keeps coming. It keeps coming. It keeps coming. I mean, it's barely subtext. It's just text. So Spielberg has made some of the great malevolent higher power movies. And I think Jaws is, even though it's about a shark, like there's nothing literal about that shark. He doesn't behave like sharks behave. The movie does such a good job of tricking you into thinking it's about a shark, but it's actually just about a monster. Like if you know anything about sharks, Jaws is ridiculous. There's nothing plausible about the movie, but the movie does such a good job of just making you feel like if I go into the water, this unstoppable force this unstoppable and personal force that just wants to destroy me will. And it's really scary, actually, in a way that transcends sharks, or in a way that made people suddenly associate sharks with that sort of fear forever.
Yep. I mean, Shark Week exists because of Jaws.
Yeah.
It really just doesn't exist without Jaws.
Right.
Shark Week's cool.
Shark Week is cool.
Jaws is cool.
Well, anyway, 1977, Lucas and Spielberg both come out with these broad, grand statements of new age optimism. And it's interesting. I don't think that they shifted the culture, but I think that they at least had their fingers to the wind and knew which way it was shifting, because we do
They're avatars, man.
Yeah, they are. They just channeled the culture, because we do shift into this Reagan economic boom and this kind of optimistic, our anxieties have at least quieted down and America's actually pretty awesome. And our movies are all, Rambo's going to go back and save the vets this time, the prisoners of war, the POWs this time. And you do also have to see Spielberg and Lucas and all those movie brats as being that generation that we just described. They are the counterculture. There is institutionalized Hollywood, and institutionalized Hollywood is old and stupid and doesn't know what to do with all these anxieties. And then people like Spielberg and Scorsese and Lucas come along and they're like, let us actually channel this stuff for the youth of today in a way that will be potent. And a lot of times they weren't very well understood and they had to fight to make their way into the movie. But the only other thing I really want to talk about in terms of context is just Spielberg, because obviously we need to talk about Spielberg, but his personal life is more interesting than I actually remembered that it was. I knew he probably didn't come from a happy, I seem to remember he didn't come from a happy home, and how could he with his...
We talked about Poltergeist.
Yeah, with his sardonic view of suburban life, whatever you want to say. But it's interesting the ways that his life went wrong and the kind of brokenness he came from. His dad is a computer genius who helped invent computer processing as we know it. And his dad is that greatest generation, was in the war doing computer stuff, I think. American man, hard worker, away from the family a lot. Just the definition of someone who couldn't give emotionally, but provided for the family and was a good, stable, of the era, stereotypical dad. And then his mom is kind of what you would expect, actually. She's full of life and wonder, and he describes her as not having a maternal bone in her body, but being a wonderful playmate, like never an authority figure, but Peter Pan. I think Spielberg used that. She said, my mom was Peter Pan. Like she would just take us on these wonderful adventures, and she's just a pure bohemian.
You know what you're reminding me of?
What's that?
A movie that as you're talking, I think we actually will have to talk about, like it or not, just Tree of Life. Mm-hmm. Because those are the two parents you just described.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
That film is channeling that stuff too. I mean,
yeah,
maybe we don't have to talk about it.
It's kind of 1950s suburbia. It's all that.
It really taps into that.
Well, a lot of people
Our
had
friend Brett McCracken will be really happy when we talk about that.
Yeah, well,
we'll give him a call and let him know.
Yeah, you've got him on speed dial, I think.
I do.
So his mom is just this bohemian. There's a story of she goes to a pet store when he's young and she sees a monkey that looks sad. So she buys the monkey and brings it home. Meanwhile, dad's never around. And that's all pretty much what you would expect from Spielberg's home. And here's some more stuff that you would expect. I'm getting to the part that was maybe a slight subversion. He's nervous. He's lonely. He's neurotic. He doesn't make friends easily. He likes to make movies with his Super 8 camera, and he watches all the TV and absorbs everything about cinema language.
Shocked.
What's that?
Said I'm shocked.
Yeah,
so
it's shocking, isn't it? And makes really good for what they are, home movies, and gets his dad to put up a little bit of money. But his parents' marriage begins to fracture, and he remembers really despising his dad because his dad is just this John Wayne type figure, but then his dad breaks down at a certain point. There's a famous story that he actually cribbed from for Close Encounters where his dad just starts crying at the dinner table or something like that. And Spielberg just feels this hatred, this loathing for him and starts yelling, "You cry baby, you cry baby, you cry baby," over and over and over and over again, which is just taken up and planted in the movie that we're talking about. And his mom becomes really sad and distant, and she likes to just sit and play the piano, and Stephen is her only son. He's got 3 sisters, but Stephen's her only son, and so he becomes her confidant, and she will tell him, "Stephen, I'm so lonely and I'm so sad." And maybe this story isn't that surprising, actually. I don't know. I think I just remembered it differently. Here's the slightly interesting part. I'm rethinking. I shouldn't have set this up as a subversion because it's actually just a version, not a subversion. It's actually exactly what you would expect. But here's the interesting color to the story. When Spielberg's in his about 20, his parents' marriage finally falls apart, and his dad leaves and is estranged from the family. And his dad tells the kids that he is divorcing the mom. The actual facts of the case are that the mom is so bored and lonely and emotionally undernourished and all that stuff that she has an affair with Spielberg's dad's best friend, ends up marrying him. I think was married to him until he died. But the dad wants to take the bullet. He does not want the kids to despise the mom. So he just takes all the blame on himself and says, like, it was my fault. I divorced her, even though it's quite the opposite. I mean, obviously it wasn't a good marriage by any stretch of the imagination, but the ultimate person who put a bullet in it was mom. But dad does not let the kids know that. And so dad and Stevie are estranged for something like 20 years and come back together, I think around the time of Last Crusade, actually. Like you can track all this through and put little pins in the dartboard through Spielberg's career. But Spielberg hates his dad. Holy Grail. Yeah. Yeah, they find the Holy Grail. But Spielberg hates his dad and thinks that his dad is the monster and that his mom is this sympathetic figure. And then over the course of his life, his adult life of making films, like over the course of his career that we know, finally puts the pieces together and eventually has a warm relationship with his dad and a warm relationship with his mom, and eventually becomes quite an Orthodox Jew, which is around the time of Schindler's List. So, I mean, it's kind of 1-to-1. Like if you made the biopic of Spielberg's life, it would just be sort of lame because every big change that he would make would result in another artistic masterpiece, which I always hate in biopics. It's like Ray is like, "Get out of here, Jack! Hit the road!" And then there's a piano right there.
Hit the road.
Wait a
Jack.
second! I hate that moment in every artist biopic. But sounds like Spielberg's life is actually a lot like that. I think like he really, one of the things that makes him great is that he just processes it up on the screen in a way that we can all relate to.
Don Draper.
Yep. Oh, exactly. And so Close Encounters is interesting to put in that paradigm because it's kind of, I'm making an excuse for my dad, or I'm my dad, or I'm bearing the weight of the fact that I, Steven Spielberg, am actually seeing my dad and myself, but also we're casting the male figure as the dreamer and the everything that he saw his mom as. And then we have this boring, prosaic housewife. And I don't know, we can talk about it, but it's interesting the big thing that you have to see is that this is just a guy who he felt like a bohemian outsider in suburbia at the best of times. And at the worst of the times, he just saw his whole family fall to pieces because of an emotionally distant father and, a wild, erratic, artistic, whatever you want to say about her mother. And so as the primary 20th century interpreter of suburbia, he is someone who hates it. I mean, and has it's funny because I'm so nostalgic for Steven Spielberg's Suburbia.
For his childhood?
Yeah. I want to live in Spielberg's childhood. Like, it feels warm and nice to me. But when you actually think about the movies, like when you think about E.T., you wouldn't want to be in Elliot's shoes. I mean, sure, you'd want to meet it. You don't want to meet E.T., but the divorce that's going on in that movie is really sad, and what's happening to the kids. And like, there's...
Yeah. No, you'd love to be trick-or-treating in his neighborhood back in the day or something like that, maybe. With kids everywhere. But yeah, you wouldn't want to... Dad's off in Mexico.
But all those details make it feel like a real place. Like, you can anchor yourself in the reality because the families are just as bad as your family was, and everyone's yelling at each other in the same way that you used to, and everyone's talking over each other. There's such finely observed detail in the way that Spielberg hates suburbia that you kind of love it anyway, just because it's such a perfect evocation of it. Really quickly hit the highlights of his career up to this movie. The legend is that once his family moved to California, he would sneak onto Universal Studios. The legend is even that he walked into kind of Catch Me If You Can style. He just found a random office and pretended like it was his office for several months as a young man and just lived on the studio. That's probably not true. I think Spielberg is one of those guys that likes to tell the legend sometimes. But what we do know is that he would sneak onto the studio a lot. He would get on the tour bus, and then when they came to their first bathroom break, he would wait in the bathroom until the studio bus left, and then he would just hang out on the Universal lot, and he would talk to all the tradespeople and learn all the jobs, learn all the camera work, and all this kinds of stuff. He was not able to get into USC, which was the big California film school that Scorsese and all these people, Lucas, everybody comes out of, but he did get the money together to make an independent film called...
Duel?
Nope. Amblin. 26-minute hippie movie about a guy ambling through the desert. No dialogue, really artsy-fartsy, but well made enough that it caught the eye of one of the production guys, vice president for production of Universal Television, and he gave Spielberg a contract to do TV, and then Spielberg did Duel and a number of other things and was just regarded a very highly regarded film.
Up-and-comer.
And then just a savant in terms of knowing how to use the camera, knowing where to put the camera, knowing how to work fast and get great results out of actors. Like, nobody's ever had a bad word to say. It seems like that part of the legend is true. Somehow this little kid that never had any formal training just absorbed the language of film and was able to speak it arguably as well as anyone in the 20th century. And so Duel is the famous movie where the truck chases the other thing, the car around, and it's all suspenseful and stuff. On the strength of that, he gets to do Jaws. Jaws is a famous, terrible production. Everything goes wrong, goes under budget. The shark animatronic thing keeps sinking, and it's just terrible to try and shoot in the water. The tides are changing, the colors are changing. Like nothing about Jaws went right, except for that it made more money than any movie to that time, and was a big smash and helped create the blockbuster wide release movie culture that we knew and loved through COVID, and maybe we'll come back now. We'll see. But on the strength of that, Spielberg gets a blank check to do Close Encounters, which is something he's been dreaming of his whole life. When he was a young kid, he remembers his dad waking him up in the middle of the night and saying, let's go see this meteor, the Perseids, I think it was. And so they go and see this meteor shower, and it's just this very magical, mystical experience in Spielberg's life. And after that, he's always loved aliens and believed in aliens. And Project Blue Book, you can listen to our UFO episode of Sound of Sanity to get some of the context on that. But there's a lot of people that were... Close Encounters is on the cutting edge of like all the science, all the stuff that the Frenchman is doing. That's all stuff that was being done at the time.
That Frenchman is based on a character or on a person who, I mean, you can like go listen to his like interviews on Rogan, and I forget his name off the top of my head, but he's based on some.
Is it J. Allen Hynek?
Hynek. It may be Hynek.
Hynek's the guy that coined the phrase close encounter, the various levels of... Hynek worked for Project Blue Book, which we talked a lot about on our UFO episode. And he was a skeptic who set out to disprove these things, and then famously ended up saying, there's just no way that there's not something out there. It doesn't have to be an alien, but it's something. There's too much evidence.
Jacques Vallee.
Jacques Vallee, okay. So an actual Frenchman.
Yeah. Pretty sure that that's the right story. Maybe somebody out there listening can get that right. But I think Jacques Vallee is who Spielberg based that Frenchman on. And you can go listen to him talk about alien stuff and whatever on Rogan. But I think he was a linguist. Mm-hmm. So I think the whole like linguistic...
But this movie obviously has an interest in we can communicate through color and through
color and music and things like that. What are the universals that we could use to communicate with? Which
actually Spielberg's first idea, and probably a more sophisticated one, is we can use math to communicate. That's the universal language. But he knew that was not cinematic.
He had to wait for Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, he had to wait for Denis Villeneuve to make an utterly morally bankrupt piece of garbage.
Hey, speaking of which.
Let's see. Jake might have some more details about Jacques. What's his name?
Jacques Vallee.
Jacques Vallee.
I think I'm looking him up.
Yeah, in the meantime, the only other thing I will say about this movie is you have to understand Star Wars was being made at the same time as this movie. So Spielberg wasn't drawing on all the innovations that Star Wars had.
I'll just read his...
let's hear it.
This is his Wikipedia entry, and I'm just going to read the just blurb at the top. Jacques Vallee, born September 24th, 1939, is an internet pioneer, computer scientist, venture capitalist, author, ufologist, and astronomer, currently residing in San Francisco and Paris. In mainstream science, he began his professional life as an astronomer at the Paris Observatory. Vallee co-developed the first computerized map of Mars for NASA in 1963. He later worked on the Network Information Center for the ARPANET, the precursor to the modern internet, as a staff engineer of SRI International's Augmentation Research Center under Douglas Engelbart. He's also an important figure in the study of UFOs, first noted for defense of the scientific legitimacy of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, and later for promoting the interdimensional hypothesis. So he's sort of like this theorist type person. And yeah. But all the things, all the big theories about what would they be like, how would they get here, how would we know, interdimensionality being more likely for us to have any kind of plausible encounters, how would we communicate with them?
Right.
That sort of thing. That's my understanding.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, the larger point is that it was in the ether at the time, and there were any number of people who took it as seriously as the Francois Truffaut character does, and as the various factions in this movie take it. Project Blue Book was a government-funded project to document encounters with the extraterrestrial or with unidentified flying objects. And they compiled thousands of reports, interviewed thousands of people. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who worked for Project Blue Book, was a skeptic who became a believer and coined the phrases close encounters of the first kind, second kind, and third kind. I don't remember what each one of those is. Close encounters of the third kind is obviously when you meet them. I think first kind is when you see them, like when you see something in the sky. Second kind, okay, yeah, I'm remembering now. Second kind, I believe, is when they leave some kind of a trace or evidence or burn marks, or you have some kind of physical interaction with them beyond just seeing something. And then close encounters of the third kind is what happens in this movie. We have a very close encounter.
Wikipedia, if Wikipedia is to be trusted, does say that he is the real life model for Lacombe, in that he attempted to interest Spielberg in an alternative explanation for the UFO phenomenon, he tried to argue that they shouldn't actually be extraterrestrials with Spielberg.
They should be interdimensional.
Yeah.
I finally had his day in court in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
And Spielberg said, "You're probably right, but that's not what the public wants. This is Hollywood."
Yeah, well, that's why Spielberg, he's some guy you never heard of.
That's right.
Taking the previous pin out of the cork board, or anything else on this guy?
No, if you want to read more about the sort of like frontline, what are the people who really believe and really want to have some kind of scientific basis? What do they really believe? Who are they? Probably we've given those people enough thread to pull on.
Yep. It's interesting stuff. So, taking the pin out of the corkboard, special effects. Star Wars was not out. They were working on this concurrently, so they couldn't just draw on the innovations of Star Wars. The big gauntlet that had been thrown down previously was 2001: A Space Odyssey, which you watch now, and it's a little bit clunky, I have to admit. But it was a mind-blowing space movie that would have been Spielberg's touchstone and the thing that he had to beat. And the big innovation that Star Wars was making at the same time as 2001 that Star Wars was making at the same time as Close Encounters is something called motion control, where they can film a shot, say, of Richard Dreyfuss walking down a mountain where the camera pans with him, and they can, in a computer, record the way that the camera moves so that when we go to do our special effects shots, we can have the camera move exactly the same way. And if we're doing model shots, we can have the camera move frame by frame that way, which means we can get a moving shot of our model that matches a moving shot of Dreyfuss or whatever. And that means that, like, if you watch any cheesy old sci-fi flying saucer movie, the camera never moves when there's a big special effect thing because they hadn't figured out how to do that. And so it's not that you might ask, like, why does that even matter? Who cares? But one reason it matters is because you always know when the special effect's going to happen, because the camera will be moving around as it does. And then suddenly you have this static locked off shot before something exciting happens. And also it limits the dynamic stuff that you can actually do. So, like an old Ray Harryhausen claymation movie, it's always going to be these static shots of the monster rampaging or Jason fighting the Argonauts, or Jason doesn't fight the Argonauts, he fights the skeletons, that kind of thing. So the big innovation of this movie is that the camera can track special effects and have that in the same shot with people. And it just adds so much to the dynamic nature of these particular special effects, and makes them feel really real. And I'd say they mostly still hold up. I mean, it doesn't look like what we're used to in terms of the way that CGI puts shots together, but the spaceships look pretty good and seem to really be there and all that sort of thing. The only thing that maybe looks a little weird now is actually the way that some of the matte shots of like the sky and just like his neighborhood establishing shots, which I think are beautiful. They're beautiful images in and of themselves. They just don't read as realistic anymore. If they ever did. But all right, that's some context. What do you guys think about Close Encounters of the Third Kind? I think we've already basically maybe said our thoughts or alluded to our thoughts enough that people can figure them out. But Ben, you had never seen this movie before. Why don't we start with you? How did you feel as you watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Well, like it's a well-made movie, and it's Spielberg. He's good at speaking the language of movies, no matter what you watch of his. But I didn't like anyone in the movie. I'll go with everyone. I liked Lacombe, the French guy, but I didn't like our main dude.
Right.
He wasn't sympathetic, and his family wasn't sympathetic. And even when it was sad and awful, it was still like, it was like watching Aliens or something.
Mm-hmm.
I found his wife pretty sympathetic.
Okay.
Did the movie mean for you too, though?
I'll give that to you.
I don't really care.
No, I'll give that to you. I think
I think it did, at least at points. You don't give.
It did.
You don't give that line. What's the stupid line while they're on the highway?
Right.
I think I'm handling this very well.
Don't you think I'm handling this
pretty well?
Yeah.
And she's being sweet and coming on to him.
Yeah,
it was very sweet.
Well, it's almost
sweet.
like
that's a really sympathetic
sweet
read on the wife at that point.
It's like Spielberg lacked the maturity to write a consistent character, because there are scenes where she just says all the wrong things, doesn't understand anything. She feels like a bad sitcom character who's just designed to be the thing that stands in Richard Dreyfuss's way. And Terry Garr always plays that material more sympathetic than the script, but there's parts where the script seems to really hate her. And then there's parts where the script suddenly wants to give her some depth, and it's just, I think it's kind of just bad writing. Like,
I think what I was picking up on was that the movie was like a shell game exercise about someone looking for transcendence with no grounding in actual transcendence or love or goodness. And I think that's why it all failed. Terry Garr is sympathetic. She's sweet. There's some of the family stuff just feels real.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh yeah, this is just an actual family. It's not a good family or a healthy family, but it's like an actual family.
Or a family that achieves
it.
any kind of pathos in their drama. Like, you're not so caught up in what's happening to them that you're like,
I think
you're devastated by it either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't even seem to want to draw you in. It wants you to be interested in Roy's obsession.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the drama that there is the obsession with these UFOs and his personal quest, which is not, kind of like we were just talking about Into the Spider-Verse. It's kind of the same. It's like, it's not defined in the text of the film. Mm-hmm. What does he want? He'll just tell you over and over again when characters ask him, what do you want? I just want to know. I just want to see. I just want to know. What do you want to know? Whatever it is. I just want to know. I just have to be part of it. Why is the image that the aliens imprint on your brain so powerful and magnetizing? Why does it obsess you and compel you? Well, because it does. Well, why does it? Well, because it does. Because it's what there is. I have to go. I have to see. It just does. That's all. That's all that you get. It's just empty. And to me, the feeling of emptiness is just evident from the beginning of the film on, and put me off of finding much enjoyment, except in it's well made.
Right.
The science-y investigative parts they're kind of fun.
Yeah.
It has a feeling of verisimilitude. That's a word we like to use around here. It just feels like, yeah, this is how people would talk and process it if they were real scientists. Not that I would know, but Spielberg is really good at evoking that. Like this, it's not just like, these are TV scientists and they say sciencey things. It's like, no, find out little things an inch at a time.
And it stacks the deck in dumb ways with the scientists,
of course.
You're ready to buy it. It's like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm a linguist, but I was also a cartographer back in the day.
Right.
You know, in the opening scene.
It's clumsy.
Later.
That.
I used to be a cartographer. Here's the important...
Their coordinates.
But what's not clumsy is like the visual design and the sound design and the dialogue design.
It's got that 70s kind of overlapping dialogue.
That's what I noticed
where
a
it's
lot.
all just kind of buried in the mix, and it feels very like you're there. And not like we have a microphone shoved under the important person. The family scenes work that way too. It's not like you can only hear Dreyfuss and Garr. The kids, everything's mixed. It's very 70s. Jaws has the same sound design, and it's really cool. An innovation of sound design at that time.
It's really cool and immersive, and it makes everything more interesting.
Yeah,
it makes you really work in that opening scene too.
Yes,
like
it really does.
Nobody knows what's going on, and you don't either, and you have to work as hard as they do to figure out what's going on.
Is one of these guys the main character? I'm not sure yet.
What are they actually? What's actually being said? They have thick accents, and the wind is way up in the mix.
Yeah.
And their voices are way muffled, and everybody's fighting, and you're like there with them, and you're trying to figure out what is going on and how to.
It's pretty great, pretty genius.
It's exactly what Jaws does. It's like when Dreyfuss shows up in Jaws, it's not like this close-up of, it's Hopper, the great oceanographer. It's just he walks up, he starts talking to Roy Scheider's character. There's a bunch of people talking around them. Everything's...
Yes.
And the whole movie's kind of like that. The only part of the movie that's not like that is good old Quint, who
Right.
is a very movie character, intentionally so.
When
just
he
like,
speaks, we listen.
here I am, stepping out of legend and fable.
Exactly right.
Quint.
Yeah.
I mean, Quint
deserves it.
he deserves it, but it is almost dorky. Like,
Yeah.
the whole movie's so low key, and then you have this one zany character from another universe. But
Yeah.
But
Part
he
of
steals the show. He's the best. part of
oh
the
yeah,
movie.
Quint's wonderful. I love Quint, and the Indianapolis speech, of course, is one of the great moments in cinema. And we'll just have to do Jaws one of these days. But I don't know. But do you have any more major thoughts? So you felt pretty checked out. You didn't have to wait to get to the end of the movie and see the
No, I
mess,
didn't.
you know.
I felt alienated from the movie. There you go. You're welcome.
Well done.
For the whole time.
Blue Ribbon.
And I fitfully enjoyed it on the level of craft.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not like or care about the characters as a rule.
I think everything you said is fair. I think it feels a little sterner than what my take is going to be. But Jake, what's your take?
I'm the stern one.
You're the
so
stern one, yeah.
you can-
I just thought, well, one way to process your midlife crisis and your rejection of all responsibility is to make a multi-million-dollar movie about it. It's very mature.
Well, not to bring too much of my own personal baggage into this, but let me bring my own personal baggage. So my dad left our family to go be a missionary. That's what happened.
And you would see him in tears about this kind of thing, right?
About mission work, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, did he provide for our family in the way that he should have? Did he stay married to my mom in the way that he should have? No, but he sure did have a big transcendent mission that he had to fulfill for God. And the world is full of irresponsible men who are bored with the wives of their youth and don't have the gumption to actually discipline their children and make them likable and want to just get out. And those guys always find transcendent reasons why they don't have to take responsibility for their family. And as a parable for that, this movie is absolutely toxic, and I hate it.
Yep.
That being said, as a light show with aliens, I like it. Okay, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Spielberg himself has actually said, "I would never have the dad get on that spaceship if I made the movie now." I mean, he has. I don't know that he said like, "I repent of it." I don't know that he would talk in that language, and how could he? Because this is one of his classic touchstones. He can't like disown it, but he has said, "There's just
and you
no way
feel
I
that
could
there's no way that he would do that now." Like, you've grown up with Spielberg, and
I'll tell you exactly how the movie works now. I can write the script for you. He is having problems with his wife and kids, and the whole movie is about like this thing, and then they all end up on the tarmac, and he has a choice whether to go up that ramp or reunite with his son or whatever, and then he chooses family because really the thing that he needed was there all along. That's 1,000% what Spielberg does.
That's
now.
what he does, and he's not going to lay in the dramatic. He's not going to give you the dramatic reasons why the character would actually make that choice, but the character is going to make it. It's just like War of the Worlds, what Tom Cruise does, right?
Oh yeah, his son.
It's exactly
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, War of the Worlds has War of the Worlds had a perfectly good nihilistic ending set up.
Yeah.
And then Spielberg was like, actually, the son's alive and they love each other.
Yep.
Yeah, Spielberg does that kind of thing all the time. He can never leave well enough alone. This is actually one of his darkest endings. He just doesn't know it. Even Minority Report's where Cruise's kid killed and disappeared and he never figured out what it was. It's going to end with him and his wife
are reunited,
and not just that, but she's pregnant.
Yeah,
I mean Spielberg is
pregnant.
Just laid a lid on,
and he's saved the precogs, and they have a family of their own together, and they
after all the nihilistic dystopian despair of Minority Report, which is very wonderfully done. She's pregnant of all things. I mean, come on. come on movie. But you got to kind of love him for, he went through one divorce.
When did give us that timeline?
So that is a really interesting question. He is not married, obviously he's not married to his second wife, but has he been divorced? That is the big question.
I'm really slow, I guess, but I just had to laugh. I was thinking of the final images of the film. Look, old former family. Now I have space children. They're beautiful. They'll be my children now.
Yeah, no, it's
it's hilarious.
Okay, so he's not married. He is dating Amy Irving during this time from 76 to 80. So you have to imagine a lot of the baggage of this movie is him dealing with his parents.
Yeah.
And being just a young man who's angry and probably a little misogynistic. But
I mean, that makes it really read. I really felt, and I know you guys both made the case that nobody's sympathetic, but I felt
like Terry Garr is sympathetic.
And I felt a lot of solidarity with her, like through the movie. I just felt like,
but you can't ultimately side with her because that makes Dreyfus a monster. I mean, that can't possibly be the way the movie's intended to be read.
I know, but I just going along with the movie. I just think this is she's just doing the right things. She's not. When did she do the wrong thing? She holds on. She fights through the shower scene. Like, she's doing everything she can. And then he starts throwing plants through the window and shoveling dirt in the window. Throwing bricks and getting the kids to throw bricks into the kitchen. And what is she supposed to do? He's lost his mind.
Yeah.
She puts them in the car and leaves.
I think it's all perfectly. I don't resent her at all, and I never did. What I resent is the movie making me watch those scenes of her doing that, and then it's still about his transcendent revelation.
Well, so the best read you could put on it as metaphor or as parable, like the terrible Gospel Coalition read is when it's Christian in Pilgrim's Progress and his wife and everybody is called, but he knows God is out there. So he puts his hands in his ears and says, eternal life, eternal life. I guarantee you some idiot Christian on the internet has had this read.
I know they have.
Of course it is. And the film is a burlesque of that.
But I mean, at least that could be a way to actually make Terry Garr sympathetic. Like, okay, she's fine. She just happened to be in the way of this guy finding eternal life in the stars. But I always thought the movie, I don't know, it's interesting because there is a sense in which the movie hates her a little bit. I mean, she's comparing the stupid thing to a taco like she just does not get it.
But he compared it to a hot dog first.
And it's a sweet scene and it ends with them making love or whatever and it's nice and it's you feel the sweetness of their marriage. It's the one time where you feel like they're married. Oh, this is why these two ended up together in the first place. Probably because she wanted him actually and he thought he was settling because he's an idiot.
Right.
I don't think the movie knows exactly. I think it does feel bad about the wife and kids.
That's what I'm arguing is that it feels some guilt, and you can't overemphasize the importance of Spielberg putting his words as a kid in the mouth of having that kid yell "crybaby" at your protagonist. Like he's finding some sympathy for his own father there or something like that. I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing something. He's trying to say it's complicated. It's not just Terry Garr bad, Richard Dreyfuss good.
Yeah.
But she is plugged into corporate America and into prosaic concerns and mundane things. Like she's always coded as someone who's like looking in catalogs and wants to talk about the shopping center. I don't remember what the actual dialogue or points of reference are, but she's just always going to have some boring middle America thing that she wants to talk about before Dreyfuss's quest intrudes on their lives. And it does feel a little bit angry to me. Like we're saying, man, isn't it a drag to have a wife and kids when you could be having a space adventure? But then it doesn't want to just make her into a caricature. It wants to play fair. I don't know. Maybe where I'm landing is it's an angry young man who kind of hates everybody, but he also wants to play fair. And so he includes some things that play fair, but he's not really mature enough to actually play fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost more, I don't know. It's a little Eastern. It's like, yeah, I'm guilty and I hurt a lot of people along the way, but there's a time at which you have to leave that behind. So sure, I'm guilty, but also goodbye.
Yeah, it is very Eastern in that sense. Well, the one thing
I was called. I was chosen.
I was called. I was chosen.
Sorry that you weren't. Like,
I'm sorry that I did a bad job of leaving, and I couldn't bring you with me, but there's higher business here.
There's absolutely no regret when he goes into the spaceship.
No.
It's just
No.
like, and we as filmmaker or as people sitting in the audience, we are not supposed to even remember Terry Garr and the kids at that point. We're not supposed to think like, oh, that's weird. Who's gonna take what? They're just living with this. Like, you're not actually supposed to ask that question. You're just supposed to be like, Roy Neary found his
actual aliens from outer space saw that this man was unhappy. They read it on him with their lasers and chose him.
Well, it
offered him a chance, an opportunity to transcend this mundane reality.
The film also signals, it puts, if you were thinking about Terry Garr and the kids at all, the movie is crass enough to have him kiss that other lady before he goes into the alien spaceship, so don't forget about them.
Right.
If there's any romance, it's with her anyway. So
right, they're the ones that were soulmates even before they run into each other when everybody's out, kind of having a little picnic, and like these people are on the elevated plane. Well, it's important to note about Terry Garr. She had done Young Frankenstein at that time, so people knew her from that, and she was kind of a light comedian and that sort of thing. But she was also famous at the time for doing coffee commercials, and so Spielberg cast her based on seeing her in a coffee commercial and thinking this is a very charming, funny person who knows how to sell herself while selling coffee. You know, a little bit like Flo from Progressive or one of those types of people. Like Terry Garr would have been like just universally known as a coffee pitch lady.
And unlike Flo, liked.
Right. Yeah. And unlike Flo, everybody likes Terry Garr because how can you not like Terry Garr? She's a very likable person and knows how to bring that energy. But I think it does help make the case for this character as being someone who's stuck in the prosaic kind of grind of middle American corporate life. She's interested in lower things while Richard Dreyfuss is interested in higher things. So, but yeah, she's the most sympathetic character in the movie because Terry Garr is the most sympathetic performer in the movie, and she's the only. Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss is not a likable actor, and he's not made to play anything particularly likable in this movie.
He's at his most likable in Jaws.
Yeah, just being the.
That's because he's the nerd.
Yeah, he's the twerp. He's
the twerpy nerd who's a little bit of a sexual threat. Like Roy Scheider's wife is a little bit into him. Like that's who he's supposed to be. That's the text of Jaws. And so that works perfectly. Richard Dreyfuss is perfect as kind of an alpha beta type who's a little bit of a threat, but also a complete twerp. Richard Dreyfuss has made a career of playing those kinds of characters. And the best Richard Dreyfuss movie is, of course, What About Bob? Because Bill Murray is just unleashed to make Richard Dreyfuss's life hell. And it's very satisfying for the audience. And there's nothing sympathetic about Richard Dreyfuss at all in that movie. Yeah. So did we all say our overall thoughts on this?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I will say I want to throw a little love towards the first act of this movie. Yeah. The whole family drama of the central part of the movie is a drag, and everything where he's running around Wyoming is a little bit of a drag, and the light show is at the end is suitably spectacular. But the thing that I really do love is everything that happens when Dreyfuss goes out in his truck.
Yeah,
and it's just a wonderful sequence, and it really makes you feel the mystery and the awe. And even just when we cut to Muncie, Indiana, and we see the single mother's porch and the sky is out there, and it's this wonderful kind of Norman Rockwell painting kind of sky. Yeah, doesn't really look realistic, but it sure does evoke like there's something lurking in the heart of America. Like Stranger Things wishes it could evoke that vibe in one shot, as well as Spielberg can just do effortlessly. Or even just as probably another matte painting, the God's eye view of the neighborhood when we first meet Dreyfuss's character. And then when he goes out in the truck and the way the spacecraft is introduced, just coming up behind him. And then that stuff is wonderful. That is its own movie. And that is a 4-star, great, one of the best alien movies ever made. And it's sandwiched in between some boring marital
little
drama.
Cool jokes, thoughtful jokes that are in there too. The flashlight. The
flashlight's great.
Yeah.
Well, and I absolutely love, I don't know whether it's product placement or not, but if it is, I love it. I love McDonald's. I love Coke. I love all the little toys that come to life. Everything that...
First, I thought you were going to talk about the military trucks and stuff like that when they converge on the town. And
that too.
But yeah, all the toys and things like that.
All the little things that connect it to my childhood and that really make it feel like this transcendent thing is invading actual tactile reality as I grew up with it, as we know it. Like, it's not some generic restaurant. It's not a movie restaurant. It's McDonald's. They're invading middle America, where we have McDonald's, where we have Coca-Cola, where we smoke these kinds of cigarettes, where our trucks feel like this. All the knickknacks that go flying when his truck is being menaced. Like, it's so of the time and so tactile and so real and so lived in. I mean, it's what Lucas did with Star Wars, and Alien also did that year with space stuff, where, you know, you think of like a Marvel movie and those worlds never feel lived in. No. You never feel like you could just sit in, like, this is how a chair feels in Wakanda. And Spielberg and Lucas and their generation are so effortless with those kinds of details that just put you in the headspace of the character, so that when the transcendent thing comes, you feel really anchored in that reality. It's all the little toys in the kid's bedroom that comes alive. It's the screws that come out of the when he's being abducted.
Right.
It just feels very, very tactile and very real, and it's really, I really love that about this movie, and it's particularly strong in the kid's abduction scene, which is a justly famous Spielberg set piece. Glowy lights coming through a window, glowy orange lights. You know, J.J. Abrams is going to try to make a career out of this crap and never come anywhere close. I mean, this movie, I never liked Super 8, but this movie makes me hate Super 8 even more, because it's just like, nice try, J.J. Like, you think you can do this kind of thing, but...
I liked Super 8.
In order to do this kind of thing, you actually have to do it. You can't just gesture towards it. You have to actually have some talent. Number of hit movies made by Nathan Albertson, 0. Number of hit movies made by J.J. Abrams, 6 or 7. So those are your counter argument, folks. Man. All right, let's talk credits. Let's just talk our way through this movie real quick. What did you guys think about that credit sequence?
My house was concerned that I hadn't turned the sound on.
Yeah, I was too. I was messing around with my controls and everything like that. But I think that might be one of my favorite credit sequences. I was just thinking, like, the amount of different moods that John Williams gives you there, where you start with this trilling note of anxiety, and then you suddenly build into sort of wondrous transcendence, and then you build into just kind of a crescendo, a bam, before we're in the desert. It's pretty awesome. Again, Stranger Things wishes it could do something like that. Marvel wishes. I mean, just
Marvel does not wish.
Is nobody allowed to aspire to Spielberg and Williams?
I wish they would. I mean, yes, please aspire.
Marvel doesn't wish. Marvel does not. Marvel doesn't care.
Marvel just doesn't do credit sequences.
No, what they have is a really cool credit, a pre-roll sting.
Pre-roll sting, which is great.
It's pretty cool.
And does some of the same work of...
It does a lot of work.
Right.
It does so much work.
It's so irritating.
Right in the mood for Marvel and gets your feels going.
And then at the end of the show movie, you're like, wait a minute. Why
was I nostalgic for any of that? You tricked me again.
I hate this again.
And then you go to the next one. Yay!
You just did the Fox, but that's okay.
No, it's
No, he was.
You're right.
And it's like it's like all movies that I hate. It's like there's Captain Marvel with her mohawk, and yet still
Wakanda.
And I'm like, yay! But what people seem to have forgotten is that Marvel arguably does this as well as anyone with that little sting, but they'll often put a scene before the sting, and which is fine. That's a fun way to do things. But what I like about a credit sequence like the one in Close Encounters is that we're transitioning the audience out of their mundane lives into the mood of our movie, and we're taking a little time to do that. And so we're going to, first it's just like, oh, hey, the movie's starting, and then we're going to build some anxiety, and then we're going to build some wonder, and then we're going to tell you, get ready for the adventure of your life. And then suddenly you're in the desert, and it's like you've been transitioned emotionally so effectively.
Mm-hmm. I love credit. I love the challenge and the opportunity that credit scenes created.
Yeah, and
whoever decided that wasn't how it had to happen.
Well, I think our old friend Peter Jackson is one of the people that helped kill it for the modern era, because Lord of the Rings movies were very influential in the way that they're structured, and they just started with a title card and Lord of the Rings, and then we're into Cate Blanchett telling us why we should care. Which is effective in its own way, but I think it's been a bad influence on things. Okay, so you have the desert scene, you have the air traffic scene. I think we probably said most of everything that one might like to say about those scenes.
Air traffic scene, another good example of people talking over each other. And
really fun.
Just that thick, well-designed layer of sound.
I was thinking about, the challenge and fun of designing that scene and making it work. It's pretty
in terms of
cool.
Visually or audioly. Or
you've got
camera angle,
different conversations
all the actors
happening,
saying their lines.
People talking over each other.
Has to be talking over. It has to be heard enough that
you can select who you're listening, which conversation you're listening to.
Right.
And there's no preference really given.
No.
Not visually or not from a visual or audio standpoint.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that's so effective about it is that there probably is on some level, but you just feel like there's not, like they're sort of one way or another directing you, so you get all the information you need.
Yeah, but it's just really tricky, and it feels confusing and frustrating as an audience person. Like, I feel like I should be listening to the black guy sitting in the chair, but the white guy came up behind him and started talking to somebody else, and I don't know who these people are, what their roles are, or what their names are. I don't know anything. I can't tell you how to I can't describe them to you, except there's a black guy sitting down and there's the white guy standing behind him, and they're talking to random other people off to the side.
Yep.
And it's hard to.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah. It's frustrating in just the right way, because it's the kind of frustrating that makes you lean forward and try to pay attention.
Right.
Which modern movies.
Again, it gives you that sense of nobody knows what's going on here. And you're in the scene as one of the people who doesn't know what's going on, just like in the desert.
Right. Yeah. No, that stuff's real great. And if you think about that stuff, like, what does it matter to where the movie's going? Does anything really matter to where this movie's going? Not really, but it sure does create tension and expectation as to where the movie's going.
It matters in terms of engaging you in the movie and in the story and in the mystery and wonder of it all.
Right.
It's creating an ethos.
Yeah, it's doing something emotionally. Yeah, exactly. So you get those two scenes, and you're already 15 minutes. It feels like you've spent a lot of movie. That's probably an exaggeration, but
it does feel like a while.
It takes a while to get to Dreyfus, because even before you get to Dreyfus, you're going to get to Melinda Dillon, famous for, you guys reminded me of this,
Christmas
Story.
Yes, has a good line in Being Put Upon.
I had to look it up.
Moms.
I kept thinking, who's fake Goldie Hawn and why do I recognize her? That was my...
I do not like her in this movie. She seems very very off-putting, very like she thinks I should like her. Just as a performer, she has an energy that I don't really like very much. I don't know.
She's good at playing sideways to herself in Christmas Story.
Yes. I think
she's great at that.
All the same energy. You put her with that dad in Christmas Story, and it works really well.
Yeah.
But
in this movie, it's like she's not likable enough for you to even want your hero to end up with her.
Yeah. Maybe it's just that the movie doesn't bother to flesh her out at all. Like,
That's
who
true.
is
Also,
she? Why is she single?
It does not bother.
Why does she live in this idyllic
It does not
Thomas
care.
Kincaid painting house with her son? I mean, I'm sure they're perfectly, it's not implausible. You know, what is going on up there?
The sound, whatever mundane thing it is really transformed down here. Sounds like quite a process happening.
Oh, it's our stupid robo vacuum.
Vacuum cleaner.
It started by itself.
Yep. I thought so.
All right. Well, she's going to stop that when she gets a chance. All right, folks. We're just going to be honest. There might be a robot vacuum going above us as this podcast is being recorded, but we're not going to let us stop us. We're like Richard Dreyfuss. We will throw garbage through the windows of finishing this podcast. We will not let the robot vacuum.
And some of that garbage is the robot vacuum,
yeah,
actually.
Exactly.
But please don't go. Like, everything's going to be fine. Just don't go, listeners.
Don't go, listeners.
Yeah. All right.
So we meet the single mom and her adorable little son, the first of many famous munchkins in Spielberg land. He is pretty sentimental about kids, whatever anger he has about suburbia. I mean, I guess he just sees himself, I was the poor put upon little angel whose parents were mean and were fighting all the time, but I was just an adorable tyke, I guess.
Roy Neary's kids are never adorable.
No, Roy Neary's kids, we don't have a lot of sympathy
They're anti-adorable.
Yeah, but to be fair, the E.T. kids have a lot of the same energy that the Neary family does.
That's true.
Some pretty famous insults that I won't repeat are thrown back and forth in E.T. and eventually we come to have sympathy for. But Drew Barrymore is very similar to the kid in this movie in that she's just this little moppet, this little angel with dimples and all that kind of thing. So, greatest kid in Spielberg? Is it Short Round?
Elliot. The answer is Elliot.
Oh yeah,
that's where my mind went.
There's no real comparison. Elliot is about as good a child acting performance as you could want in cinema history. I mean, I just don't know. Find me a movie that leans so heavily on a child actor that gets you as much emotion and sympathy and actually tells a compelling story.
Yep, I'd agree with that. He's fantastic.
I mean, Drew Barrymore is great beside him, and the older brother is fine.
And they're all good. I mean, Spielberg is very good with kids. I mean, he's just arguably one of the great directors of children and very good at manipulating them without making them hate him later. And there's all kinds of famous stories of him. When the kid says toys in this movie, which is a cute little moment, it's actually because Spielberg is off camera opening a present that has toys inside, and the kid is in fact excited about those toys. And there's just all kinds of things like that. But
I'm going to open my computer.
Yeah.
And I'm going to search greatest child actor performances.
You're not
and I'm going to get a bunch of Shirley Temple crap, I bet. But
there's like not Shirley Temple. Pan's Labyrinth actor plays Ophelia, but she's not as appealing as Elliot.
Dakota Fanning was a good child actor. I don't know. Lindsay Lohan in The Parent Trap.
Haley Joel Osment in Unbreakable.
Or he wasn't in Unbreakable. He was in Sixth Sense.
No.
Victoire Thiveseau in Ponette.
You're right.
Jean-Pierre Léaud in The 400 Blows.
That is a great one.
Yep.
That is a movie by Francois Truffaut, who plays Lacombe or whatever.
Cuban Jean Wallace in Beasts of the Southern Wild.
Never seen it.
Natalie Portman.
Oh, Beast. That's a terrible movie.
Leon the Professional.
Natalie Portman is quite good in The Professional, but I don't know what's asked of her in that movie.
Bridget Fossey and Georges Pujoli in Forbidden Games. Elle Fanning in Somewhere. Keisha Castle Hughes, Whale Rider.
Never did see Whale Rider. Was never interested in seeing
Saoirse Ronan in Atonement.
Sure.
Anna Paquin in The Piano.
Nah.
Jacob Tremblay in Room. Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver.
That is a great performance.
Jonathan Chang in Yi. Brooklyn Prince in The Florida Project. Tatum O'Neal, Paper Moon.
That might be the greatest child actor performance of all time.
Wait, who?
Tatum O'Neal. Have you ever seen Paper Moon?
No.
Yeah, we'll have to do it for the podcast one of these days. It's a wonderful movie.
Cool.
And not as well known as it should be.
Banerjee, Pather Panchali.
Have you even said Elliot? Did you skip Elliot, or
no,
does the stupid list just not get there?
Abigail Breslin, Little Miss Sunshine.
Sure, but who cares?
Cody Smith McPhee, The Road.
Sure, but who cares?
Haley Steinfeld, True Grit.
That's pretty great.
Mhm.
Enzo Stiola, Bicycle Thieves.
That's pretty great.
Catherine DiMangio, Jaji dans le Metro, some French movie, apparently. Mina Muhammad Khani, The Mirror. Tom Holland in The Impossible, who's 14 in that movie. Kolya Spiridonov, The Italian. Ty Sheridan, Mud. Edmund Mushka,
Ty Sheridan's good.
Germany Year Zero. Noah Wiseman, The Babadook. Henry Thomas, E.T.
There we go.
Number 27
Number 27.
on this list.
Whose list is that?
This is Close-Up Culture,
Oh, well.
but they have a whole bunch of films I've never heard of, so it's probably smart people.
So, yeah, Elliot.
This other list here puts Tatum O'Neal and Paper Moon at number 1 and Henry Thomas and E.T. at number 2.
Now, there's a good list because those are both wonderful performances.
Number 3 goes to Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone.
Hey, it's iconic for a reason. Put his hands up on his cheeks and pretended to scream.
Number
Like a
4, Abigail Breslin, Little Miss Sunshine. 5, River Phoenix, Stand By Me.
Meh, meh,
6, Anna Paquin, The Piano.
meh.
7, Leo DiCaprio, What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Sure, but meh.
8, Christian Bale, Empire of the Sun.
I was wondering where that one was going to be listed.
9, Noah Schnapp,
That's what we'll
Stranger
do someday.
Things.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
What was it?
Number 9, Noah Schnapp, Stranger Things.
Oh, boo.
10, Haley Joel Osment, Sixth Sense.
I'm behind that one. He's very
11, Kuvan Jean Wallace, Beast of the Southern Wild. 12, Jodie Foster, Taxi Driver.
good. Behind that one. Jodie Foster was a great child actress.
13, Albert Sy, Trophy Wife. 14, Sean Astin, The Goonies. 15, Chloe Grace Moretz, Kick-Ass. 16, Jacob Tremblay, Room. 17, Daphne Keane, Logan. 18, Saoirse Ronan.
Well, the first list was...
Saoirse.
Is that right?
Saoirse?
Yeah, that's right.
Saoirse Ronan.
The first list was too navel-gazing with all its French stuff, but this list has left off certain things that should be on there, like the kid from the 400 Blows. So...
19, Kiernan Shipka, Mad Men. Sally. 20,
She's pretty great.
Millie Bobby Brown, Stranger Things.
And
You got 2 Stranger
That's
Things ones
recency.
on this.
Yeah. This is way too lame stream. Okay. Have we talked? So we've talked enough about Dreyfus and his encounter with the UFOs. Is there anything else you guys want to say about the way that the UFOs? I like when the ship rises up behind him. I think that's a neat way to introduce a monster.
Yep.
I really like that part. Or I'm not a monster, but I don't know. I think it's fun when movies have well thought out cinematic introductions to major elements instead
Pretty
of
great.
just being like,
Pretty awesome.
hey, it's monster dogs. They've released them. There they are. Like in every Marvel movie ever made. And then, I don't know, we've already litigated as much as we're going to the Terry Garr performance and the wife and most of that stuff. Is there anything you guys want to say about the middle of this movie or any the scene where they go to the globe, they roll the globe, the fake out with the helicopters? Anything else to say about Barry's abduction? Or, well, I did want to say Spielberg is really good at communities annoyingly having meetings, like the small town community meeting, because there's one in Jaws that's great,
Right.
and then there's the one in this one, and there's like the doofus guy that wants to tell about his encounter with Bigfoot,
Right.
and stuff
Yes.
like that. This movie it's not just the tactile nature of the thing, the products that are included and the way that the physical locations are shot and shown in this movie, but it also has all this observable human behavior that spectacle movies just don't bother. Like you watch, like I like Marvel movies. I'm not trying to beat up on them. They're just an easy example that everybody knows. You watch a Marvel movie and there's nobody in there that's actually acting like a human being. It's just people acting like movie characters. And I like movie characters. I like people that have snappy dialogue and stuff. But this movie is just going to have like the guy telling his Bigfoot story who's boring everybody and being weird, or a cutaway shot to mom and pop doing their thing, or just it's just going to have well-observed human behavior going on in the backgrounds and at the cracks and crevices of the scenes. And you kind of forget how little movies actually just have like, there's a little kid acting like a little kid, or there's an old man picking his nose, like the kinds of things that you see every day when you could go to the mall. Obviously, all three of us like to go to the mall every day. It's where we hang out.
Yeah.
That's not true. But you know how humans are like eccentric, and some of them are pretty and some of them are ugly, and they look different, and they have moles, and they do things, and they behave in interesting ways.
I don't go to the movies to see real life, Nathan. I go to the movies to escape from them. That's the genius of Marvel.
I don't either, Jake. But if you can have a little bit of something that feels like it's observable human behavior, it makes all that spectacle stuff really connect. So, I don't know. I like the community meeting scene, and I like the Bigfoot guy, and I wish we just had a spin-off movie about him and his adventures with Bigfoot.
You don't want to hear that sound twice.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? The other thing that I love about this movie as far as tactile, name another movie that has a house that's as crappy as people's houses actually are. Like the Neary house actually feels not like a movie set, not like it's too nice for the family, not like
a lot of 70s movies are that.
Yeah,
way,
70s. Though. Yeah, Jaws is actually another example of something that gets that kind of thing right.
Yeah, and anything, even if you like pick a Shane Black movie.
Right. Like a Lethal Weapon.
Like a Lethal Weapon or anything like that. Or even something that Tom Hanks is going to be in, like Turner and Hooch or something like that. It's going to have that sort of grungy, not great, kind of not clean vibe.
I agree.
So there's a cultural ethos that's not just unique to Spielberg, I think.
I agree with that, but I would still argue, like, you take something like The Weapon. Okay, it feels pretty grungy compared to today, but it's still like Murtaugh's house. It's a little bit better than the house that he would actually be able to afford on his policeman's salary and his characters. It's like it's a little bit bigger because we just need space to put our lights and our cameras and stuff. And it's so much of grunge just feels designed, and even in the best of grungy 70s auteur cinema. But the Neary house to me, just like I did not live in that house, but I had friends. I could name them. I won't embarrass them if they listen to this podcast. Not that any of them do, or that I'm in contact with any of them, but it's like I know that family's house exactly, exactly, who had those things, and it just felt like that. And I don't usually have that feeling in a movie. So I don't know, maybe Spielberg just happened to choose a house that looked like a particular house that belonged to, I won't say their names. All right, so we have all the Neary family drama. We have the famous potatoes thing. We have Devil's Tower. And then we have that long chase section. And for me, that is just boring. Like when they're in Wyoming, I think even the first time I saw this, it's like, all right, we know they're going to, I don't know, did you guys saw this movie for the first time much more recently? Were you actually engaged by running around trying to avoid the military and all the kind of subpar action kind of stuff?
No.
Just feels like we needed our movie to be a little longer or something like that.
Yeah, what you wanted is for the Frenchmen to just let the people who were called to make it work, and let the people who were called.
And you feel like that's what's being set up, because he's obviously, we've overused the word, but he's obviously a benevolent character. He's obviously a sympathetic, empathetic guy. That's like the whole point, is that he sees things that other people don't see. That's all we know about him as a character.
Yeah, and he's making the case or whatever. But it was almost as much like he really wanted that moment where they're like, don't take your masks off until you get clear. And as soon as they clear, everybody takes all their masks off.
Right.
Like, it's like we needed a reason to have that scene.
Right.
And so we had to get rid of them, and also had to have our characters deal with the thing. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the way that this would typically be handled in a movie today is you'd really amp up the villainy of the other military, and so you'd have like a machine gun fire that our characters could dodge, or just some completely lame artificial threat that they would have to overcome to earn their medal and make it to the grand finale. There'd be some bad guy, some cigar chomping general. I'm thinking of the wonderful Dustin Hoffman movie Outbreak, which is 90s schlock, but it's all about like a disease or something. That's about Ebola, basically. And Dustin Hoffman's the researcher that's going to take down Ebola. But then at the end of the movie, Donald Sutherland is like an evil general in a helicopter, like trying to, for whatever dumb movie reason. There's like so many movies have that. And this movie at least has the good sense not to provide a fake, phony.
I don't mind. In terms of the logic and structure of the movie, the point is many are invited, I guess, but few are chosen.
Yes.
You know, and so the group that actually gets to go with the aliens is being winnowed. Like, who actually has the desire? Well, only 3 people are like, let's take off the masks and run! And only they make it that far. And then only 2 of them are like, we should avoid the helicopters. And the other guy's like, it's just crop dusting. Oh, wrong. You're asleep. You're going to miss everything. And then, so only...
Just hope you're not climbing when you fall asleep.
Yeah, no kidding. And die, yeah. So only, it's like, it's putting you through it to make you feel like, hey, this is hard to reach this transcendent goal.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's dragging on and on. It's like you're climbing with
Everyone
them.
and everything is against you.
Everyone, and that's it. So
your wife and kids are, it is that sort of Pilgrim's Progress. You know, your wife and kids are against you.
Yes.
The government's against you. The townspeople are going to, the people that you think are with you are going to start talking about Bigfoot and embarrass you.
You lose your job and
Yeah. And you're going to get there and then you got to climb the literal mountain.
Which is all fine, but I almost wish it was, it's nicely underplayed. And usually I'm a fan of underplaying things like this, but I think we could have used a little bit more on the nose drama here. Like let's meet the guy with the glasses, the third guy, and let's figure out what actually makes him unworthy. Like let's have some delineation of there's a reason why Roy Neary's really worthy and Melinda Dillon's kind of worthy, and this guy's was worthy to make it this far, but he wasn't worthy to make it all the way. And
right. But no,
just as a parable, I think you could effectively stack the deck in a way that would make it land a little bit harder.
It was just occurring to me that, well, this is really basic, but both the times when he's about to turn back from his insane quest for the aliens and rejoin his family, he sees something, or he gets a new insight, or the news shows the flat.
Right.
What's that place called?
The Devil's Tower. Yeah.
There you go. It shows Devil's Tower, and so he's willing to make a sacrifice and leave behind what he's done. But then, nope, just more reasons for him to leave his family and forget about them.
It's a metaphor for how, as Christians, we just have to keep having faith. And sometimes we don't walk by sight, but if we go long enough, don't you just imagine there's a bunch of crummy
pasture stews.
don't you just think there must be a million terrible Christian pieces about this movie?
This movie would be a great start for the Reborn Popcorn Coalition with the new trio we talked about, which we're not going to tell our listeners right now.
I think.
But listeners, if you'd like to hear that, well, Sanity the Movies has a Patreon, and man, if you get it up to, I have no idea what to say. I don't actually have a pitch.
If you get it up to $5,000,
definitely.
I can guarantee if you get it up to $5,000, we will do some Popcorn Coalition or whatever you want.
Seriously, get it up to $5,000 and free us.
Yes, free us.
Oh man,
yes. Let us move on to the next level of existence.
Let me tell you all of how awesome our lives and your lives would be if you got Sanity at the Movies Patreon to $5,000.
Yeah, it'd be great. You'd get a lot of Chip and Lance and the Ville and Sanity at the Movies, and
that's probably about all you'd get.
Yeah.
But more awesome, fun, creative stuff ongoing. That's for sure.
Yep. Free us. We've seen the money in the mashed potatoes. Now help us make it to the top of the mountain. I don't know how that metaphor works. Well, listen, we're to the big special effects, the stuff. What do you guys think about the iconic stuff?
The mothership is awesome.
I like the mothership.
It is having, the design where you have all the patterns of lights that look like, are those letters? Are those alien letters? And you're like, maybe. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's just a lot of detail and fun. You have the city metropolis looking thing that flips upside down.
Yep.
And
that's
cool.
Maybe you guys have had this experience. I never drive past like a lit up in the night oil rig or refinery type place. Sometimes you just drive past mechanized lit up industry in the middle, like when you're going down a highway. I don't think of Close Encounters when Spielberg has set up my imagination in such a way that And I think it's because they were drawing on that kind of stuff, obviously. But yeah, I always think of the mothership when I see certain things. And
I just read a script treatment for James Cameron's. Actually, let me read like the opening paragraph of this script treatment.
which, by the way, if you want to hear us read the rest of it, minus some naughty bits that we'll be skipping over, patreon.com/Sanity at the Movies.
It was all I needed. Fade in. A geometrical pattern fills the screen. Silver threads in moonlight. Part of a spider's intricate web. It moves slightly, and we see behind it the giant of an eye. Or the glint of an eye. Sorry, that makes a little more sense. The glint of an eye. Pulling back. 2 eyes blinking in the darkness behind a mesh of fishnet material. Continue pulling back to reveal a face. A face shrouded in darkness, covered by a concentric web-like pattern. Behind the mesh, we catch a hint of the features. Not much. It's the eyes which command our attention. Pulling back. Head and shoulders. A black night background. Wider still, revealing a muscular silhouetted figure sitting cross-legged with zen-like composure. The arms are straight down between the legs. Behind the figure is some kind of steel structure. But wait, as we pull back, city lights have come into view, and now skyscrapers, but they're above us, sticking down into the frame like the mothership in Close Encounters.
Hey.
Camera rotates now 180 degrees, putting the city where it belongs, below us, and revealing that the figure is hanging by his hands, by a thread-like wire, cross-legged and chilled out, upside down. He's wearing a form-hugging bodysuit. Hard to make out the details in the moonlight. Who is this wacko? Keep pulling back. The figure is hanging like a spider from a radio mast high above Manhattan. There are familiar landmarks: Pan Am, Chrysler Building, Empire State. The Empire State Building is lower than us, so there's only one place we could be. 1,400 feet above the street on the radio mast of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. A quarter of a mile below us, the traffic moves like corpuscles of light through the circulatory system of the city.
Hey.
Pretty cool.
Pretty amazing.
Scene.
Cold open scene.
Well, and interesting that Spider-Verse was the one that finally
Did
that same thing.
Yep.
Interesting that the idea originated a long time ago. I guess it's an obvious idea if you're trying to break a Spider-Man thing visually.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Well, if you want to hear where that goes, which I assume you do, then you could pull it up on the internet yourself, I guess, or you could pay us on Patreon, where we will read it for you. We haven't done it yet, but we're going to. Maybe we probably will have by the time you hear this. I'm just guessing. All right. So, yeah, big alien reveal, and I guess we're saying it kind of lives up to the hype. It's pretty cool and all that.
Yep.
I do not like the aliens. I think they're pretty lame, actually. Like E.T. is such a more sophisticated creature than you have those little aliens that come out who are just little girl ballerinas in alien suits, if anybody was wondering. And then you have the alien that smiles at Francois Truffaut, and he's okay, I guess, but
You have the creepier parent alien who looks like a spider unfolding itself as he comes down.
I'm just gonna be honest. I don't love him either. I want to give Spielberg full props for being amazing and all that kind of thing, but I don't love those aliens.
They are, I mean, more than any other alien that we saw that year, meant to evoke what actual people describe when they see them, right?
Yeah, they're designed after all the latest research of the time. I mean,
all the sightings, all the abduction, all the whatever stuff, like they're meant to evoke that, to be this is the true story of the saucer men that people have been seeing for 20, 30 years now.
Yep. And maybe I'm doing that dorky thing, that somewhat unfair thing where it's like so many things have keyed off of Close Encounters that it doesn't seem that special when I see it now, because I'm just like, oh, well, they're doing the alien thing. That's what aliens look like. But I imagine it was pretty cool at the time. I don't know. Anything else you guys want to say about this movie?
Not really.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I was just trying to think if there was anything else. These are can we at least agree these are the worst aliens of 1977? The movie Alien has much cooler aliens, and the movie Star Wars, little film called Star Wars, has, I would say, much cooler aliens than any of these aliens.
Yep.
In terms of, you just feel like this is a real creature. I feel like I would rank them Chestburster, Cantina, Aliens, Grown Up Alien from Alien, and then Smiley Guy, and then Ballerina Girls, and then Spider Guy. Spider Guy's the worst, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
His limbs just don't work the way that limbs would work. Close Encounters, 0 stars for this movie.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, should people watch Close Encounters?
Nah. It gives you a window on Spielberg in the 80s, but it is a pretty angry and not that enjoyable movie with no nutrition.
I mean, it's
Am I
not.
being too mean?
It's not going to like suck too much. If you go and do it with your eyes open, I'm not sure it's going to suck too much nutrition out of you. Like,
No, it's not going to do that.
It's closest thing maybe that Spielberg has to Mark Twain's definition of a classic. The kind of thing that nobody wants to read, but everybody wants to have read.
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah, you kind of have to see it if you're interested in movies at all.
It's good to have seen it. It's not good to see it, but it's not great to watch.
I mean, if you just go down Spielberg's filmography, okay, nobody cares about Sugarland Express. You got to see Jaws. You got to see the indie movies. You got to see E.T. You don't got to see Close Encounters. I mean, it's the one that feels like an artifact and not like a living, breathing piece of entertainment. Well, there you go. That's Close Encounters. Don't leave your family to go on a mothership. If anyone listening was thinking about doing that,
Don't do it.
somebody should make the sad, depressing movie of the government explaining to Terry Garr and her kids that they're never going to see their father again. That should have been the credits cookie. They should have a Marvel credits cookie.
But your grandchildren might. He'll be the same age. The aliens will bring him back.
But what am I supposed to do for money? The benevolent aliens didn't solve that. All right, coming up next on the schedule for Sanity at the Movies, we're going to talk about a different sci-fi thriller, one starring that great thespian Nicolas Cage. It's called Knowing. It's a movie you may not have seen. It's got some disturbing content, not for kids, but we thought that it would be an interesting movie to talk about next. Jake's never seen it.
Never seen it. No idea what it's about.
Ben's seen it
Didn't
recently.
know that it was a movie till you guys started talking about it.
Well, now you are doing a little thing called knowing that movie exists. And not a particularly well-received movie upon its coming out, but a movie that is going to be interesting to talk about and interesting to talk about as related to the things we've been talking about, even some of them on this very podcast. So that's what we're going to do next. And I don't know, go to patreon.com/sanity at the movies to support this podcast. Anything else that you need, Ben? I don't know. How many spaceships out of 7 do you give to Close Encounters?
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, 3 maybe.
3 spaceships. Jake, how many spaceships out of 7?
4.5.
4.5. I'm going to give 7 spaceships to the first third of the movie, 0 spaceships to the middle third of the movie, and 3.5 spaceships to the last third of that movie. As to what that all equals out to, you would have to do math to figure that out. And I am not going to do that right now. So there you go.
It equals 3.5 spaceships.
Does it?
It does. That's how it averages.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm an idiot. You are absolutely right. Okay. Well, until next time. Beep, boop, beep, boop.
This
You
means
can't
something.
fool us by agreeing with us.
I don't even know I don't even remember that line came from.
It's from the town hall scene.
Oh, yeah. Did you just get that off of IMDb quotes page by any chance?
Some page, yeah.
How about this means something?
Einstein was probably one of them.